Greetings, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages, and for everyone like to walk. You can check her out on planetary.org. There's her blogs right there. She's bigger than she shows up on the phone. It's great to see you guys. It's so cool that you're supporting space exploration. You see, space brings out the best in us. Space brings out the best in people. Even my old boss, although I was never sure if he was human. The thing that's extraordinary is it's so difficult to go to these remote worlds, yet we do it, and people ask, they say, in my case, they say, Bill, why do we go to these other worlds? What are you guys going to find there? And you know what we say? We don't know what we're going to find, that's why we're going. My friends, if one of Emily's instruments there on Curiosity, the rover, were to drive up to sedimentary rock on Mount Sharp, off in the distance there, and find a layer of rock that would in every way seem to have been laid down or laid down by water, and in that water were some sort of fossil microbes, my friends, it would, dare I say it, change the world. It would be like what Copernicus did when he showed that the Earth is round and it goes around the sun. It would be like Galileo showing that the Earth is not the only planet with moons. It would just change everything. And so this is a worthy endeavor that costs somewhat less than a fancy cup of coffee per taxpayer. Once every 12 years. I mean, what's not to love? And get this, my friends, you go to Antarctica, you're wandering around, and what are you doing? That's right, you're minding your own business. And then you find these rocks. They're rocks out on the ice. And there's no mountains around, there's no hills around, there's no rock outcropping being ground up, there's no crevasse with the rock down below. The only way for those rocks to get there is if they fall from outer space. And so we take these rocks to laboratories in, let's say, for example, Huntsville, Alabama, and you crack them open, little bubbles of gas come out that match exactly the Martian atmosphere. My friends, it's not crazy to suggest that life started on Mars. Mars got smacked, and the rocks landed on Earth, and we are all descendants of Martians. I mean, it's extraordinary and the stuff of science fiction, but it's not impossible. And that is worthy of investigation. Because there are two questions that get to all of us at some point. Where did we come from? Or where did I come from? And am I alone? And if you have not asked one of those two questions, just come on. Have some more to drink or something. Those two things drive us. They make us want to look up and out. And if we stop looking out into space, what does that say about us? Oh, we'll just stay home, everything's fine. No. Our ancestors who had that attitude are no longer our ancestors. They got eaten by somebody else who was a little more curious about what was over the next horizon. So I'm very excited about the future. We're living at a crossroads in space exploration. The Planetary Society was started back in 1980, the winter of 1979-1980, as As disco was giving way to new wave, yeah. You know, the important work of Sid Vicious and the Sex Pistols, an inspiring work. So it goes back a long ways, and the Planetary Society was started because there was concern by guys like Ray Bradbury, very beloved science fiction writer, and Carl Sagan, who was, strangely enough, one of my old professors. It was started back then because these guys were concerned that public interest in space exploration was very high, while NASA support, worldwide support for it in governments was not especially high. NASA and the Russian, in those days, the Soviet Space Agency. And so we started this society, and what we do is three things. We create, we have these crazy little projects. For example, we are once again considering putting a microphone on a spacecraft on Mars. And you meet these guys, you go to meetings, and they, oh, we don't need to do that because we can figure out what it would sound like on Mars. We know exactly, we've measured the gases. No! Come on! Put a microphone, come on, listen to it. How cool would that be? In the early days, speaking of the Planetary Society, there was a guy named Bruce Murray. This Planetary started by Lou Friedman, who was a manager at NASA, Carl Sagan, among other things, my old professor, and he's known for some other stuff. But then Bruce Murray. Now, Bruce Murray went on to become the head of the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena during the heydays, I mean the wild days of the Voyager missions and the Viking missions, the first missions out of the solar, the only, Pioneer and Viking were the missions that left the solar system. Viking were the first missions to land on Mars. Anyway, he pointed out that we got to put cameras on these things. This, right now, in fact, let's say the 8th of December, day after Pearl Harbor Day. Nominally, December 14th, just 6 days hence, is nominally the 50th anniversary of interplanetary spaceflight. So NASA repurposed or rearranged, reconfigured one of the Ranger spacecraft. Now, I'm of a certain age, but I remember the Ranger spacecraft. This was a gizmo that just smacked into the moon, just, and you could see the moon coming up like this. It was very exciting. Reconfigured one of these things and sent it to Venus. But in order to save mass, and there was concern about the reliability of telemetry, sending the pic, they had no camera. They sent a spacecraft to Venus with no camera. And Bruce Murray, one of the founders of the society, was the guy who really stepped up and said, look, you guys, we get scientific information from pictures. And you listen to Emily talk, and you just not only get the passion, I mean, it's just, they're just so beautiful, but you also realize how much science is in there. So the Planetary Society was started back then, and we are at another crossroads, another turning point in space exploration. You guys, we are all kooky for space. We want to see what else is out there. But because of budget constraints and so on, there's a lot of talk about cutting the NASA budget, and when the NASA budget gets cut, it affects space agencies all over the world. When NASA pulls out of the ExoMars mission, which was going to be in 2018, the European Space Agency has to go find somebody else to get them a rocket. So the Planetary Society is trying to change that. We create these crazy microphones, we educate. We got Emily up there on stage educating us, as much fun as it is. And the third thing we do is advocate. Guys like me and Emily and Casey Dreyer, and once in a while Matt Kaplan, will go to Washington Washington and visit congressmen and senators' offices and tell them, we got 30,000 people, 35,120 people tonight around the world that think this stuff is cool, and so you should support it. But wait, there's more. I claim that for every dollar spent on space exploration, we get it back in technology. I am talking to you from a laptop that weighs less than most of my old textbooks when I was in engineering school. And you can see my face and hear my voice. I can see your faces and hear your voices. And we would not have this without space exploration. And other people around the world realize this. The country of South Africa just started its own space agency because South African officials realize having 8,000 people with PhDs running around in their country is going to raise the level of the expectations of everybody in society. That's the big thing. Space brings out the best in us because it makes us realize what we can do as people. And one more sobering thought, as Dr. Sagan often remarked. We are star stuff. The elements that you and I are made of, oxygen, carbon, iron, these things are created in exploding stars. And somehow these elements came together to make you and me. So we are one way that the universe knows itself. And I hope that fills you with reverence. And it fills me with joy, and it makes me want to, dare I submit, change the world.
Yes, I can hear you. All right, so I have some questions that have already been submitted. We'll also get to some more questions from the audience. I've got a couple that have already come in from people who are in the audience. So the first one comes from Raquel Valencia. Who's Raquel Valencia? Are you out there?
Raquel, it's great to see you after all these years.
She says, what is at the end of the universe?
Well, I'll tell you. Nobody knows. So we are in California, and not very far from where you all are sitting and standing is Mount Wilson. So our good friend Edwin Hubble is up there in Emily, you may know the number, but I think it's 1927. And he convinces himself that everything in the universe is spreading apart. And then he realizes that if everything's spreading apart, it must have started somewhere, and that place it started has come to be called the Big Bang. But I hope you stop and ask yourself, in my case I would say, Bill, if everything was together, then what was outside of that everything? I don't know, man. A class of mathematical equations that suggests that there might be more than one Big Bang, there might be more than one universe, and we are but one of several or many multiverses. And if that doesn't, if I may, blow your mind, what does, really, okay? What do you, and so furthermore, wait, there's more. People went out to figure out how much the universe is slowing down. If it explodes, well, so of course it's in space, so there's no sound. It goes like this. If it explodes, everybody expected it at first to slow down, that gravity would be retarding it. But in about 2004, it was clear, after some very diligent and cool scientific analysis of exploding stars, that the universe is not slowing down, it's accelerating. And do you know why, Raquel? Do you know why? Nobody knows why. That's why we, of course, great question.
All right, the next question science is that there is no clear moral compass, and that science's pursuit of knowledge has no relationship to the pursuit of character. Mr. Nye, as a science guy, what do you think science has to offer us regarding the pursuit of quality of character?
Okay. As we say in comedy writing, if you buy the premise, you'll buy the bit. This is to say, if you can make the audience believe in your premise, then the audience will accept the comedy that follows. Well, the premise that we have no moral compass inherent in us, I don't accept that premise. And the modern explanation for this is evolution. That our fellow tribes people who did not have good ethics, who were not team players, who did not play fair, they got pushed off the cliff, or they got allowed to be trampled by the bison herd, or they were encouraged to starve to death by people who were team players. Apparently, by all accounts in modern evolutionary research, humans are born egalitarian, that is to say, looking out for each other, looking out for fellow tribes people. Furthermore, there is the loyalty to your tribe, which we now espouse or can measure by whether you're a Lakers fan or a Clippers fan. But there's also loyalty to humankind, and so you can see this. And so then, as you spend more time traveling, as a person spends more time traveling, as a person lives in a bigger and bigger city, or lives on a large river where there's a lot of, let's say, maritime traffic, we find that racial bias is lower and lower. This is to say, as you are exposed to more humans as a global tribe, you are less, if I can use this term, racist. So in an evolutionary sense, there is tribalism, but not racism. And so the premise that without a religion you don't have a moral compass, I disagree with. And I will also make, this is hardly a radical assertion, that at least in my lifetime, religions have been very contentious. Religions have led to tribal warfare on a scale that I'm not sure you experience without it. This is not an especially controversial thing, but people have been fighting in the Middle East since I was a kid, and they're still at it. And I can't tell the difference between one group and the other by looking at them. So I'm not buying the premise, but it's a great question. And I'm in the thick of it these days with all this stuff about the Earth being 6,000 years old. It's a great question. Thank you.
All right, so the next question comes from Sagar Amin. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah. Sorry?
So, does the Earth have a carrying capacity? If so, how are we going to deal with that in the future?
So, by that I think you mean carrying capacity for humans. So, when I was 9 years old, my family took me to the World's Fair, and there were 3 billion people in the world. We had just changed from 2,999,999,999 to 3 billion. Well, now in my lifetime it's changed to over 7 billion. People speculate that it'll top off at 12. But boy, I'd rather it topped off way sooner than that. So if everyone were to try to live the way we live in the developed world, we would need about 2 more Earths. So in general, we don't have those by any record. We don't have 2 more Earths. So the key to the future is not to do less per person. This is when I was growing up, this was the idea. Everybody would do less. You drive less, you use less clean water, you wear dirty clothes, and you eat less. You just, in fact, don't even eat less. Don't eat at all. That would be great. But that turns out that to be really unpopular. So what we need is to find ways to do more with less. And that's where science and engineering comes in. And for me, that's where space exploration leads the way in our technological innovation. And as far as reducing the human population in a reasonable, orderly way, and in fact, I'll claim the most effective way, all we need to do is raise the standard of living of women. When the standard of living of women goes up, the population growth goes down. This is an easy thing to say, but a hard thing to do. The longest journey starts with but a single step. So if we can use, let's say, investment in space to lead to investment in education, especially science, engineering, technology, and math education, we can, dare I say it, change the world.
The next question from Duval towards Culpepper.
Hello, man.
We got two questions today, man. What is the current bottleneck that holds back the advancement of human deep space exploration?
Well, our problem can be expressed in ways. Am I here? Am I here? I was doing hilarious gesticulations. So my experience, Matt and Emily, when you move things to and from the camera, like if you guys are watching in 3D, the autofocus takes up some bandwidth. So I will stop moving and I'll work to not move around so much. So where were we? George Culpepper asked about what's holding us back. Is the main thing is we just don't have the money the way we did in the Apollo era. That was the Cold War. Emily referenced $151 billion for the Apollo program. That's reckoned in 2010 dollars. That reckoned in the same dollars as the interstate highway system, the federal portion, costs $117 billion. So if you spend 1 1/3 or 1.5 times as much money as building the interstate highway system, you can put 12 people just about anywhere you want. So our future in space is to have a steady progress, a steady, a systematic way of farther and deeper into space. By the way, did we mention the Planetary Society? This is what we advocate. When you get into the thing that people like to refer to as budget spikes, there's an extra $2.5 billion one year. That's when congressional and senatorial representatives freak out and cut the budget. So our claim at the Planetary Society is the commercialization of space with companies like Sierra Nevada Corporation, Blue Origin, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic. These guys are going to be able to take us into low Earth orbit much more cheaply, which will then allow us to send people farther deeper. What we want to do is go to an asteroid, look around, and then set up fuel codes in space. We'll learn to go farther and deeper without spending as much. Screwing up the data. So this is a steady thing that takes place over decades, and the reason we want to send people to these extraordinary destinations. First of all, don't want them to get hit by an asteroid. That's really undesirable. Slow them down or speed them up just a tiny bit. Then the other thing is humans explore, it's estimated, about 10,000 times as fast as our best robot. Our very best robot's built by our very best robot, but it's driven by our very best robot drivers. And so, but the cost of sending people there is about $500,000 compared to a robot. So, if men sent people for good reason, slower cost than Europe. To conclude, what we're stuck on,
Okay, here we go.
Bill, are you excited for the singularity?
Did you hear that, Bill? Are you excited for the singularity?
Yes, I'm excited for the singularity in the same way I was excited to see Watson win Jeopardy. And the computer that beat, was it Karpov, the chess master? Here's the thing, the singularity, everybody, is when you have a computer that's as sophisticated and complex as a human brain. That sounds great. But I remind everybody, somebody has to plug that machine in. Somebody's got to use an analogy, has to put shovel the coal in the engine room. This will be a fantastic scientific thing. It may, I presume, it will give us great insight into the nature of the human mind. But I don't think everything's going to change in a weekend. Because it's still powered by, my understanding is it will be powered by electricity, and that electricity will be powered by hardworking people. It will come from hardworking people. And in general, these things are farther away than people predict. But their effects are bigger than people predict. So I'm open-minded. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not going to change the way I tie a tie, or I'm not going to wear lucky underwear or something waiting for this event. It'll be important, but not world-changing the moment it happens.
Okay, so one last question. Who wants to ask that last question? Okay, you look right over here.
How do science and art relate?
How do science and art relate?
Well, first of all, they relate by these three words. Sex, sex, sex. The reason people do art, the reason people pursue science, is to do art to express your passion, which I presume is a way to engage a mate. And it's not just your mate. You want everybody in the tribe to think that what you're doing is you want to give everybody in the tribe something to think about. What makes people pursue science is this joy of knowing. And the joy of knowing somehow is deep within us. When we learn more about nature and our place in it, we are able to accomplish more. We are able to feed more people. We are able to be more comfortable. And we are able to bring up the next generation to be more successful than the last. So art and science are both part of this deep drive within us to improve the lives of the next generation. To me, they are like this. And if you can look at the art that you guys are doing there at LA Mart and not feel some passion, and if you can look at those, especially and not feel passion, well then you're not a member of my tribe. Change the world. So everybody give Emily a big round of applause.